everyone, and welcome to today's session. My name is Keith Mokris with Product Marketing at Palo Alto Networks, and I'm incredibly excited for today's Ask the Expert section here at Microsoft Ignite. Today's session is titled From Lift and Shift to Cloud Native, How to Ensure Comprehensive Cloud Security. And I'm incredibly excited to be here today with an awesome panel of experts who I'm excited to introduce on the next slide. So next to me from Palo Alto Networks is Alex Berger, Senior Product Marketing Manager for VM Series, Next Generation Firewalls. We're also excited to be joined by Steve Lasker, Principal Program Manager Architect at Microsoft. We're also excited to be joined by Scott Napolitan, Principal Program Manager at Microsoft. And rounding out today's panel is Nati Predikul, Principal Product Manager at Microsoft. We want to remind everyone that throughout the session, you're welcome to join the chat and ask questions to really guide us through the conversation today. And before we begin, we're really excited to talk about Prisma Cloud's approach to cloud native security in partnership with Microsoft Azure. In order to ensure that organizations can move to the cloud securely, we're excited to deliver a best-in-class comprehensive platform for securing your environments, workloads and applications, and your infrastructure. We're able to combine capabilities like cloud security posture management, where you can continuously audit and enforce across your Azure environments, cloud workload protection to ensure your applications and workloads are secure, integrating with tools like Azure DevOps and other powerful tools from Microsoft Azure. And then with cloud network security, we're able to secure and deliver micro-segmentation as well as security for your trust boundaries within Microsoft Azure with our software next generation firewalls. And without further ado, I'm excited to have our host, Val Glover, kick off some of the questions that we're receiving from the audience to get the conversation going.
Hi guys, thank you, Keith. So let's see, let's start with a first question around containers and container security. Steve, if you could address, what do you tell teams about integrating security across the application lifecycle, especially when it comes to containers and serverless?
Yeah, thanks. So it's great to be here. This great group of people. Palo Alto has been a great partner with us. The containers are an interesting problem, right? Their units are packaged and put up for deployment. They're built and and rebuilt. So it's security is always about multiple lines of defense, and the question is, where can you start? You can start with your code. Where does it come from? Do the typical code scanning as part of your build environment. That's kind of the first start. Then there's, well, how do I scan the container and making sure that I can scan it in a secure environment so that bringing up the container doesn't actually open up exploits. So there's all of this work that gets done before the container's even deployed. So that's part of your build system, and you want to make sure it passes those gates, if you will. And then there's runtime, right? When the image is deployed, do I have any runtime scanning? And of course, there's gates along the way. Should I even deploy it? Does it have vulnerabilities that I'm concerned about? The interesting thing that we've been getting a lot of questions about is, as customers have been building more and more images, because they build them all the time, they have lots of images that they've got in their registries, and there's lots of vulnerabilities that are in them. And how do they know whether they're actually deployed or they're just sitting in the registry, never going anywhere? And then we also get these challenges like, great, I need to archive some of these. I don't want to mitigate the issues in these images because they need to keep an archive state for 18 months or whatever it is. How do I get notifications that these vulnerabilities are there, but don't nag me because to fix them? So those are kind of the challenges that we get, and that goes across all the services. Like in Azure, we have lots of services that run containers. It's not just the Kubernetes service. So that's kind of the biggest problem that we typically hear about, and it's great to be able to recommend our various partners like Palo Alto on the offerings that you guys have.
Perfect, thank you. How about, there's a question for Nati. How does the Azure AD integration help customers during the pandemic for remote work?
Yeah, great question. I think that during the pandemic, there's a lot of customers that we have talked to. They actually have to allow employees to work from home overnight and sometimes over the weekend, right? So the biggest part is how can customer allow the employees to access all the application and resources securely. That's been top of mind, right? And with the integration between Palo Alto Network Prisma Access and Azure AD, we actually enable a lot of customer employees to basically access to all the legacy and cloud application, as well as they can use the power of Azure AD, like what we announced this week, passwordless, right? People can now don't have to use any password to sign in to get access to all the resources, which mean that they kind of mitigate all the potential phishing attack that might happen. And that's, to me, it's been the biggest change over the years. And you probably, some of you might already see Palo Alto Network app has been one of the top apps that have been used by Azure AD customer last year. So we are very excited about how can we continue to improve the integration to essentially simplify the experience of employee onboarding and then protect customers when they want to access anywhere and anytime to the right app and resources.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to add to that, or should I move on to the next question? Okay. I think there's a follow-up question to that, Nati. Are there any tips and tricks for remote work access?
Yeah, sound good. I think the biggest strategy that every organization have to think about is about zero trust, right? You should always assume breach for your organization. So what it means is that you should have step-by-step journey. Our first recommendation from Azure AD team with Palo Alto here, at least, we should recommend customer to connect every application and resources to Azure AD. So essentially, you have one system to look at who should have access to which file and which resources, and then have the right policy in place. For example, maybe global admin or security team should have the right privilege access to certain role, to certain kind of action, and always verify, right? You should always make sure that you leverage the power of the cloud. If certain users are risky, that determined by Palo Alto Network Solution or Azure AD, the policy is really the critical part that will get the bad guys out. And at the end, you know, the visibility to look at all the security threat and risk, to me, that's really important. And I do know that Prisma Cloud solution do have a lot of Graph API integration with Microsoft that will empower a customer to look at all the security angle, right? Who have which user is high risk and why, then you can take the right action. So to me, that would be kind of a little bit of tips and tricks, but I do recommend all of you to look at Microsoft and Palo Alto Network website around the zero trust strategy, because that's really important for everybody these days.
Awesome, thank you. Keith, I have a question that came in. We have several app services, Azure Functions interconnected, and also API management all in Azure. What is the best practice for security regarding authentication and authorization?
Yeah, so I'll say, definitely this is great to get questions in from the audience. So I'll share, a couple of things that Prisma Cloud can deliver, and then I'm sure, the rest of the team is going to have some things to add as well. So when it comes to your applications, you're going to want to make sure that you protect the applications themselves. So regardless of whether you're running your applications on, Azure Functions, Microsoft ACI, or AKS, you want to make sure that you can understand the current vulnerability states, the current compliance states of the application itself. And then you certainly want to understand all of the interconnected Azure services that a function might access, and ensure that you've correctly configured all of those different Azure services. And that certainly brings us to how you've configured Azure Active Directory, what users and roles have access to a tech stack that would run Azure Functions, and making sure that you can continuously audit and secure those services to ensure that they're meeting your compliance policy or you're reducing risk. Those are some of the things that are top of mind for me, but I'm sure the team would have other things to share as well.
I guess I can go next to complement. You know, the other part that I think a lot of customers these days are thinking about is how can they have the right conditional access policy in place, right? Because people can sign in from anywhere at any time. I think because Azure AD, obviously with all the Microsoft Cloud solution, we process like trillions of signal every day, and you know, leverage those risk engine, right, and come up with the policy if the high risk user comes in and you want to basically get the bad guy out. To me, that would be a good way to kind of think about using it. Plus, Palo Alto also have a lot more solution to look at, like theme in the cloud type thing where you can process the event and come up with the right action. That would be awesome to kind of look at those end-to-end point of view too.
All right, any other comments on that question? Okay, thank you guys. And I will hop to the next question. Alex, this one is for you. So for network security specifically, what has Palo Alto Networks been driving for VMs and Kubernetes innovation-wise?
Sure. So the answer is quite a bit for a while now. So from a network security perspective, you know, we've had our VM series virtual firewalls, which have been, you know, supported on Azure infrastructure for quite some time. And these firewalls are, you know, ideal, especially for, you know, the traditional kind of network security user who is used to having full application traffic visibility, including, you know, custom applications, the same level of visibility that they're used to in their on-prem environment. As they migrate into Azure and start to embrace Azure and get tasked with figuring out what network security is going to look like in their Azure environments, VM series provides a really nice way to sort of extend that legacy on-prem level of visibility and control into the cloud. So we have a lot of customers who are using those firewalls to help with the actual migration themselves, extending consistent policies from on-prem environments where they might be running our physical firewalls today, and, you know, extend those same policies and that same level of control into Azure, so that as they migrate workloads up into Azure, they can count on those workloads being consistently protected from a network security perspective. And then even customers who are born in Azure or you know, are building anything net new in Azure that want the same level of control that they have, you know, in their on-prem perimeter data, you know, of their data centers. They want that same level of control in their cloud environments too. Not to mention they want to be able to manage those things consistently. You know, that's one of the main drivers behind adoption of VM series in cloud environments, is the ability to manage policy consistently from, you know, it's an overused expression, so forgive it, but a single pane of glass, right? Being able to leverage our Panorama management console to define a consistent policy model across on-prem and public cloud environments. So that's kind of on the VM side and more traditional kind of legacy workloads. On the container side, we recently, little less than a year ago, released our CN series, our container firewall. And this is cool because now not only are we extending the same level of visibility and control from physical workloads to virtual workloads, but now we're extending it even further into the containerized environment as well. The chief use cases there are primarily around visibility. So whereas with VM series, oftentimes we get customers really leveraging our threat prevention capabilities and our advanced malware analysis services and DNS security and URL, a lot of our really kind of advanced security services. On the container firewall side of things, it's typically visibility. It's network security teams not really sure what's running from their perspective in those Kubernetes environments and just wanting to get an understanding of what's even running there. Could be that, you know, developers have been off, you know, doing their thing for a while and network security is late to the party, which oftentimes happens, and has to sort of suss out what's going on. And like Nati was saying before, they want to implement some zero trust best practices and start segmenting things and inserting some, some security at certain trust boundaries, things like that. But they don't even, they're a long way away from being able to do that. And what CN series does is starts to illuminate some of those things from a network security perspective, so that you can start figuring out what, what policies you even want to start writing for those environments. So those are the two, the two firewall form factors that we're driving when it comes to containers and VMs. And it's really all about enforcing consistent policy and consistent threat protection across your entire hybrid cloud environment, assuming you are using both on-prem and public cloud.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think one of the things people ask me is why does a customer need like Palo Alto? Can't they just use the native controls in Azure and features? And to avoid this sort of getting into a feature by feature comparison, which those usually aren't the things that move the decisions. It tends to be not just on-prem and cloud, but more and more multi-cloud. And so Azure wants to make sure that customers have that choice if they've got and it's not just features. Customers have operational investments, in terms of processes and expertise, and of course, capital investments in the on-prem infrastructure and things, and to have that consistent pane of glass, so they can have one management experience across on-prem and multiple clouds, because more and more multi-cloud is part of enterprise strategies. And Palo Alto provides a great experience there.
Yeah, actually, to tag on to the end of that, Scott, you reminded me of something. So and almost speaking back to the original question there, so what are we driving? I mean, from our perspective as Palo Alto Networks, not only are we driving, the consistency and policy and management, all those things. Our biggest focus in a lot of ways is to enable our firewalls to run as seamlessly as possible on Azure and any other cloud or hypervisor for that matter, or what have you, any infrastructure that we might be deployed on. So, every day when my, engineering counterparts come to work, they're focused, actually, believe it or not, the VM series and CN series teams are actually more focused on the automation capabilities, the integrations with the underlying infrastructure, the ability to pull user context out of AD, or pull tags from the underlying Azure infrastructure to be used in policy formulation, things like that, so that we can create dynamic policies that aren't tied to IP address and port, but instead tied to dynamic constructs that can adapt with the change of the cloud environment itself. So that's what we're really focused on. We have other teams at Palo who are more focused on the actual security capabilities, and of course we've got numerous different capabilities to choose from on that side. But I think Scott, to your point, it's really important to from our perspective to make sure that these things run as seamlessly as possible in these environments and can be integrated directly into the infrastructure provisioning workflows, the DevOps workflows, so that we're not slowing down the application teams and DevOps teams that are trying to do their work.
Yeah, it's a really important point. Thanks for mentioning that.
Sure.
All right, I will move on to the next question. Let's see. When organizations are moving to the cloud, are organizations adopting a lift and shift approach or more app modernization efforts? Keith, do you have a response to that one?
Yeah, I'm glad to provide some thoughts, and then I'm sure Steve and others, can provide their, view as well. I think ultimately organizations have a lot of strategic incentives to move to the cloud and embrace, all of the amazing, capabilities that Azure really provides them for accelerating business agility and delivering scale for their applications. And I think, there've certainly been different efforts that organizations can consume where there are certain applications that really serve themselves to breaking themselves into a microservice architecture, running it on containers, or on some of the more PaaS or serverless function type platforms like Azure Functions or ACI. And organizations are certainly doing that. And you see the rise in container adoption and Kubernetes certainly speaking to that. But I think for others, they recognize that there are business critical applications that they don't need to re-architect, and they can just run on VMs or merely just get them running in a better fashion on the cloud. And for a lot of organizations, that can still bring a lot of benefits where the application or workload might run in a better fashion, might scale better, but just getting it to the cloud certainly provides a lot of benefits. So we really see organizations taking a wide range of approaches. And ultimately, that's why Azure provides so many great tech stacks. So you get to choose how you want to run your apps.
Yeah, it's what we've definitely, it's consistent with what we've seen. I mean, when we first really started to make a concerted effort to pull networking partners and get their products into Azure Marketplace, we really saw, and this is really 5-6 years ago, I'd say, and we really saw that just get it virtualized, get it in the cloud. And the true lift and shift model, right? Let's just take we want a virtual version of the device we have in our data center in the cloud because we know how to use that thing, and we want to start. It's true lift and shift. We do still see a lot of customers that are just like, look, it's infrastructure, it works. It's good. Leave it. Don't touch it. But with that said, we do see more and more, and I think this is a trend that's really nascent now, and we see in a lot of industries, which is moving more towards that deep integration, cloud integration. So more of a service model, and then that pure lift and shift where they want better cloud integration. They want to take advantage of that cloud's authentication and policy models. And so we do see this shift happen, and it's a classic adopters curve where you've got certain industry verticals that are going to be the don't touch it, it works, versus some of the more bleeding edge and want to make that shift towards more of the services and deeper integration.
I think one of the things that also comes up a lot is I've got this nice environment on-prem. I can, it's firewalled, it's air-gapped, it's air-gapped. It's within a private network. I don't have to worry about anybody getting in because there's lots of lines there. And they want to be able to go to a public cloud, but they want that private nature. So that's something that we have heard very loud and clear, and you're seeing that across the Azure services to be able to support fully isolated environments. Private network, private links is the feature that we use there. And you're seeing more and more services support that, right? AKS can run in VNets and private link. ACR, we've GA'd private links. And we're seeing there's still some places, there's some multi-tenant services that haven't finished their work yet, but you're seeing more and more of that come. So you get the benefit of being your on-prem safety and security of a private network, except it's running in Azure, and you basically have us on call for all the problems that you have to deal with. And of course, we're working on those innovations as well to make sure that whatever the next thing is coming up, you just kind of get either it's automatically enabled or it's a click of a button or something for you. So that's been kind of a big push. That's great. You've got this cloud. Where's my security? Security isn't just about auth. I like that's a public cloud. I don't want anything public about it. So we can support that now.
Great, thank you guys. Keith, I have another one for you. With the recent acquisition of Bridgecrew, how has Palo Alto Networks been augmenting the shift left strategy?
Yeah, so this is definitely an exciting one given we recently announced the closing of Bridgecrew, which is the 6th acquisition that Prisma Cloud has in the cloud security space. And certainly this speaks to the need for organizations to shift security left across the application lifecycle. And I'll touch on Bridgecrew in a minute. But ultimately, there are already a lot of integrated capabilities that we deliver today for integrating security across the lifecycle with Azure. So we integrate with the build tools you might be using, like Azure DevOps, to scan infrastructure as code templates or container images for vulnerabilities or compliance issues. And we also have a deep integration with Azure Container Registry So we can continuously monitor all the container images you're storing in the organization. And even before build and deploy, we also integrate with GitHub to scan the packages and libraries and components for vulnerabilities that you may be using to build your applications as well. And so ultimately, we see Bridge Crew augmenting this full lifecycle security story, focusing on infrastructure as code first, but to really bring security to development and DevOps teams who play such a big part of security in cloud environments. And I think everyone here can speak to, you certainly need to protect an application and environment at runtime, but you need to make sure you're integrating with your development and DevOps tooling, because those teams play such a vital role in the security of your applications. And so this is going to continue to augment, and we'll certainly talk about this once more public features become available, how we'll be able to deliver more of those capabilities.
Beautiful. Okay, we have about 4 more minutes. Maybe we have time for 2 more questions. Let's see, the next one is, to ensure comprehensive cloud security in addition to infrastructure cybersecurity, what is being done to cover serverless and microservices workloads? Keith, do you want to start off with that one?
No, I think we should pass it to Steve to kick this one off.
I feel like I just got thrown the hot potato. What was that?
I'll read it again. To ensure comprehensive cloud security in addition to infrastructure cybersecurity, what's being done to cover serverless and microservices workloads?
Okay, so it's a great question. So the serverless models, this is a place where we need to do more on security, and I think this is a great place. Right? Obviously, in the serverless, you're still running code, having that code scanned and checked, and you can use some of the shift left models that we talked about there as well. There's various models that we're looking to do runtime protection there as well, and I believe Palo Alto has been working on that as well, where you can monitor the runtime protection of those serverless models. I think the basic premise is there should be security about everywhere you're running. There shouldn't be any gaps, and wherever you have a runtime running, you need to have visibility of what's going on. And it's not just the things we know, it's the things we don't know, right? How do you have a detection for a change in behavior? Those are the kind of things that you want to be able to check. And companies like Palo Alto with Prisma Cloud is just, they've got a great cohesive offering that could span that wide range. Hope that covers it.
Okay. Any additions to that answer, that question? Okay. Let's move on to the next one. What about SharePoint online provider hosted apps? One type of web part under SharePoint Online, is it covered, or is there cloud security best practices for this? If so, what's recommended? Keith, I'm going to give it to you again just to see if you can answer that.
Yeah, so my understanding is this would fall more under SaaS application security, which is something that we don't touch within Prisma Cloud, but we cover in other parts of the Palo Alto Networks portfolio with a product called Prisma SaaS. So I would definitely invite you to check out everything that they provide when it comes to auditing and understanding how to secure SaaS applications. But I don't know if the team has any other best practices that they would share for this scenario.
Yeah, I was gonna plug Prisma SaaS as well there. That is the, from a Palo perspective, that is the tool that is probably most useful. There was a part of that question that referred to SharePoint, even the on-prem side, and I think from that perspective, it becomes a traditional application inspection, capability of the firewall, just to make sure that what's actually communicating across your open ports is in fact SharePoint, or is in fact the application that you want to allow access to. And likewise, users accessing SharePoint online, making sure that they're connecting to SharePoint, not something else, right? That might be nefarious or something you don't necessarily want them connecting to. So of course, that's more of a traditional firewall use case in that in that sense. But yeah, I think from a SaaS security perspective, if you're really talking about protection of the SaaS application itself, that comes down to Prisma SaaS from our perspective.
All right, I think we are at the end of our time. There were some questions we weren't able to get to, so we will approach you guys offline and try to answer those as quickly as possible. Thanks for attending, everybody, and we will be in touch.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.